Hello, it's the Great Canadian Bagel here, coming to you again with another U.S. congressional election forecast update. So, just at the top, let's see what has changed. Well, Rhode Island is a bit safer for the Democrats. Doesn't change seat totals, but more vote share. The next guy over here is Illinois. The Republicans picked up a seat and have gained vote share relative to the Democrats. Some of these other states have had vote shares slightly changed, but not notable enough for it to be seen. Virginia, the Democrats have picked up a seat to obviously the expense of the Republicans. Same thing in Florida. They picked up a seat. The Democrats, that is. They've lost a seat in Texas. They've lost a seat in Colorado. I've changed Colorado's riding approximations after doing the Senate race and compiling all the demographic data by county that I would need to re-approximate it. Again, I'll just strongly say this once again. This is like a very high fidelity approximation of the new Congress seats, but it's not perfect because I don't have the exact numbers because it's not published, at least in any place that I could find, and it seems that on the federal level the numbers are only published following the Senate or the congressional election. So for now we're just stuck with a high fidelity approximation. It is, I think, pretty solid though. There might be some seat error, but we can look into any potential errors my approximations might cause following the election on November 8th when I finally do the postmortem. So the Democrats have also now picked up a seat in California. And that is all the changes. Unless I miscounted something. I still don't feel very strongly about Oregon's seat distribution. And I still don't really feel great about New York's either. I feel like upstate New York is going to be slightly redder than I'm currently forecasting it, especially in the wake of the gubernatorial polls that are showing it's a very close gubernatorial race. And I'm not sold on Oregon because I feel like Oregon is going to be closer to Washington than it is to Nevada in vote share. But the model says what the model says, and I don't proactively correct things like that when, I think it's wrong. I will let you know if I think it's wrong. I don't think Oregon's correct, and I feel like I'm underestimating the Republicans in New York. And following the postmortem, we will see how that goes. I will also note there is reason to... I think Alaska should be safe Republican, Congress-wise, but it is not impossible if the Republicans decide to vote split on their candidates or do dumb things that their Democrat could sneak through on the ranked choice vote. By all means, that shouldn't happen, but it could happen. Alaska is a much cloudier thing than everyone else because it is a ranked choice ballot, and ranked choice ballot can result in unintuitive results sometimes. At least unintuitive on a macro level, especially when you're talking about the U.S., where it's mostly a two-party system. Once you start talking about places where it's several discrete parties, it's a lot easier, it's a lot clearer. Whereas in Alaska, you have two Republicans and one Democrat running, and on paper, it doesn't make sense why the Republicans would lose. But if you actually consider it, it's probably more like you have a conservative, you have a liberal, and you have a centrist candidate, and that's an easier way to see it. And you can see how that could cause an unintuitive result and get someone who isn't elected in, or the liberal elected as congressional representative. It really depends on how the vote splits. Who makes it to the second round? Though it's a ranked choice, so it's an instantaneous runoff, but that's beside the point. So, let's see on PV terms. So, overall, the Republicans have gained about 0.7 in the Northeast, losing about... The Democrats have lost about 0.9? Yeah, 0.9. The Democrats have actually gained 0.2 in the Midwest, and the Republicans have lost 0.2, which you can kind of see reflected just in changes that, yes, Illinois slightly shifted Republican, but a lot of these places are pretty much stayed constant, which does make sense. The South, the Republicans have lost about 0.7, Democrats have gained 0.3. You can see that reflected notably in picking up a seat in Florida and Virginia. And in the West, right over here, the Democrats have lost 0.6 and the Republicans have gained 0.4. Again, you can kind of see that in how seat totals are changed. And obviously, it's more than just regionals that are causing seat changes, because otherwise this places would change uniformly. Demographics have changed, numbers have changed. At this point, though, in general terms, the Republicans are pretty much across the board just dominating everything. There is pretty much just under 30s urban and black Americans who are voting majority Democrat, other than obviously people who are registered or identify as Democrats. They obviously are voting Democrat overwhelmingly, but every other group, a majority of, is voting Republican. Notably, university graduates are narrowly, by 1 point, voting Republican in this midterm. Why is that? What could be causing every identifiable group to be voting majority Democrat except urbanites, black, and young people? And of those three, or in those three, they're also voting much more heavily Republican than they have in the past. Just bear with me a moment. You can kind of see the results. So here we have the swings. So this was 2020. Yes, this is presidential ballot, so it's not exactly the same as congressional ballot, but it's close enough. But we don't have exit polling for the congressional ballots. But the the 2020 presidential exit polling, here we see, in yes, I have negative, positive. Don't worry, I'm not biasing. It's just for math purposes. So, as we can see here, and yes, positive in this regard is Republican and negative Democrat, but don't put any thought into that. It's just math purposes. As you can see here, this is the swing. The swing is, so we see here for under 30s, they were 60 Democrat, 36 Republican, 2020. Now they're 57 Democrat, 41 Republican. So from 24-point lead to a 16-point lead, which is an 8-point swing. Does it make sense how that's calculated? If it doesn't make sense, comment below and I can try to explain it to you easier. But if you look at this, every demographic except people who make more than $100,000 a year are now more Republican than 2020. In a lot of cases, very significantly. The only other exception is self-identified Republicans who have stayed constant. Which is kind of interesting, but makes sense if you think about it. Every other group is significantly swinging. Latinos, 50-point swing. And this is what my model's forecasting. This is based off of polling data. It's based off of other things, but this, if you plug in the polls and you plug in how my model does things and does math and handles averages and stuff like that, these are the numbers that it spits out. So it is a very significant change. And yes, a place like university are very close, or university educated. And some other groups like 30 to 44s are very close, and Asians and stuff like that. But every group is tilting more Republican. Why? Well, I think it's pretty safe to say at this point in October, or October 22nd as a recording of this video, it's really the economy. Like, there was a lot of talk in August and September about the Democrats might ease back, or Dobbs' decision might cause changes or increase Democrat voter turnout, blah, 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 blah. No. There was maybe a point where the economy was looking better in September that if it kept recovering into October, maybe it might not have been a bad year for Democrats, but it still would have been a year the Republicans likely won both houses. The question was magnitude. But come October and we see higher than expected inflation. It's slightly lower than than from August, because it's 1 month in arrears. Slightly lower than August, but still higher than expected inflation numbers, and still very high. We're talking like 8.4, I think it was. Maybe it was 8.3. Regardless, that's a very small difference. Higher than expected inflation numbers. Gas prices are surging again because OPEC is cutting oil prices. The economy is shedding jobs. GDP growth forecasts are still either negative or very low, depends on the exact firm and the exact economist you're looking at, but they're negative or low positives. And there's been 2 previous terms of quarters of negative growth. And a lot of what buoys the summer, which is extra tourism, extra spending, is going to pull back in the fall, and that likely would cause a decline by itself, but hard to say. It's not uniformly true, and I will not pretend that I am a guru of economic forecasting. That's not what I do. I do elections. So there's all of these indicators going into bad economic times, which by itself hurts the Democrats because they're in power. And this is the unfair thing about governance. The Democrats technically could have done nothing wrong, and they're likely still going to get completely crushed because of the bad economy. Now, in this particular case, I don't think that's true. I actually do think the Democrats in government have done things wrong, which I think further inflames this situation. Because we're looking at not just the economy sucks, but the president and Congress, which are controlled by the Democrats, have taken actions that, at minimum, haven't made it better, or at worst, have likely made it worse. Things like the Inflation Reduction Act, Build Back Better. I don't think the whole package was passed, but there were bills of that regime passed, basically huge spending packages. Those clearly stoked inflation. At least the ones in 2021 definitely stoked inflation. It's a bit unclear about the Inflation Reduction Act, but I think most consensus is that it slightly stokes inflation. So that's pretty clear right there. Divisive policies like vaccine mandates clearly inflamed things. Hard shutdowns clearly are bad for the economy. The anti-oil and gas policies of the administration are clearly bad. You look at U.S. domestic oil production, it has fallen from 2019. I think that was when it peaked. Or was it 2020? Regardless, it has fallen from its peak, and now I believe it's 9 million barrels a day. Correct me if I'm wrong. I can't remember every number perfectly off the top of my head. I could be slightly off on this. But it's falling right now, which obviously puts more pressure on foreign imports of oil, and if OPEC is cutting oil production, that's going to increase prices. Obviously. And then you also have other considerations, the canceling of Keystone XL, which by that alone would raise oil prices already, and it would reduce incoming supply. So there's all of these things that the administration clearly did, and you can't deny they did it. That was the policy. That was what Joe Biden said he was going to do when he was elected. And he did it. So in that regard, he did exactly what he said he was going to do. It just so happens that what he said he was going to do wasn't good for the average person, and I think a lot of people are having buyer's remorse for voting for him. And I think that's why you see here one of the largest swings is independence from 54-41 in 2020 to 39-59. That's just a 33-point swing. Independents are clearly not happy. The other big group is Hispanics, which we'll get into in a second. Other big swing. And just on the economy side, that alone would probably cause a big big hit in these midterms. Might even cause 90% of what's about to happen in these midterm election here. But that's not the only thing that's going on in the US. There is a culture battle going on. Some people say culture war. I don't really like that term. I think it is technically correct, but I feel like it kind of denigrates the term war. I don't like things like war on poverty, war on drugs, culture war. I think we really should probably keep war to when people are actively shooting each other, if you know what I mean. But these issues, like the culture war stuff, I guess I have to use it because I can't think of a better term. The culture war stuff isn't something to discount. And in fact, I can't tell you the exact magnitude, but it is likely causing a lot of the swing, especially in places like Virginia or other places, possibly Pennsylvania, which normally look bluer than they currently are, and especially among Hispanics. Why is this? Well, what is the main battles in the culture war? Well, we have the first one is ban abortion versus abortion on demand. Neither are particularly popular positions, I should note as well. About 40 versus 30%, so minorities of Americans support either position. But that one right there, against the general Hispanic population, which tend to be some of the most Catholic portion of the population, that's a deeply divisive issue for the Democrats to be supporting when a lot of their support comes from Hispanics. Abortion on demand is an anathema to Catholicism. Actually, abortion on period is an anathema to Catholicism. So that being front and center, and it's becoming very clearly front and center. You look at people like Stacey Abrams campaigning for gubernatorialship, and she's literally coming out saying that abortion is a solution to inflation. That's deeply offensive to Catholics. And probably most people, frankly. But you see issues like this, and that's why abortion's really never been a big winning issue for the Democrats. Because the people who really, really, really care about abortion on demand are already Democrats. The independents are, generally speaking, not entirely, but generally speaking, the people who have the nuanced worldview of some abortion, but not all abortion. Basically, they're the people who are somewhere between 6 and 24 weeks. Some ban in that time period. Depends on the person. It's typically about 6, 12, 15, 24, or about 25% of... They're about 7.5% of the population each. All make about 30%. Which is roughly corresponds to the independents. Not exact overlap, but it's a pretty close approximation. Those people don't like the Stacey Abrams position. And it sounds wrong to them. These are the kind of people who are safe, legal, rare. Saying it's a solution to inflation or poverty, that's kind of a deeply offensive thing if you think about it, because you're saying poor people, the only solution to poor people we can give them is for them to abort their children? That's your solution? That's a terrible solution. Surely our society can have something better than that. So right there, that's why that's not a winning issue for the Democrats. Then you have the other big culture war thing, which is gender theory / critical race theory. They kind of overlap, but possibly they're different. But in practical terms, they're not different to the voter. Because the thing is, the big problem with both these two categories, gender theory and critical race theory, isn't strictly speaking the theory themselves. Though if you talk to a conservative, the conservative will tell you that they are inherently wrong. Or you talk to a liberal, they'll tell you they're inherently acceptable. I don't know. I don't know many liberals who actually argue for it, so I can't really tell you what the pro position is. If you know what the pro position is, by all means comment below. I don't want to caricaturize the position when explaining it, but I can't give you the argument their frame of argument is, because I've not actually heard it. At least, I've not heard one that I can ever imagine a serious person saying. So either there is no serious argument, or I've just not heard of it, and I'm hoping I've just not heard the serious argument, because I do obviously have a political bias, but I try in these videos where I'm just explaining the election to not insert the bias, if that makes sense. But the reason why this isn't a winning issue is it's similar to the abortion side. The people who already think teaching it is a good thing are already voting Democrat. So the Democrats fighting tooth and nail for it aren't swinging anybody. The people who like it are already voting Democrat. Maybe you could argue they're defending their base, and if they don't defend it, they will lose the base. And I'm sympathetic to that. That's probably a reasonable conclusion. But they're not winning people from it. Whereas conversely, the Republicans, by opposing it, are winning people, because a lot of people, notably parents, don't want their kids to be taught this stuff, because if you are for lack of a better term, a classical American, critical race theory is deeply offensive. It is basically the opposite of what the education system and the civil rights movement strived for the last 40 years. Really, it's just, from like the 70s to about 2010s. And it's only really been since 2010 that it's shifted away from the classical civil rights position of basically colorblindness, for example. And if you raised under colorblindness and you think that is the goal to strive for, critical race theory is literally the opposite of that. It completely disagrees with the concept of colorblindness. Colorblindness is inherently racist to critical race theory. And if you are the person raised with that understanding, and you think that is the good thing, that is your worldview, which most Americans have that worldview, well, it's going to be deeply offensive to you for your kids to be taught that they're inherently racist because they're white, or they're inherently oppressed because they're some minority group. That's bad for children. It's very clearly bad for children. Psychology has shown very clearly telling you are oppressed or you are an oppressor is really bad for a kid. If you tell a kid that they are oppressed and all their problems are outside of their control, they won't be able to strive to make themselves better. They will... It's the analogy to the elephant. You tie up a baby elephant to a post, it can't break the post, it can't break the rope, it learns that it can't break that. When it grows up, when it actually has the strength to do it, it will not try. You teach a kid that they can't succeed because they are being oppressed. Then when they're older and they have the ability to try to succeed, they won't try because they've been told all their lives that no matter how hard they'll try, they can't succeed. It's literally poison to success. So you get huge opposition to this. And it's one of the reasons why American public schools are collapsing. You look at even blue areas like Seattle. The Seattle public school system is shedding students like crazy. I believe the last 3 years, they've lost 5,000 enrollments. And it's not because Seattle has wildly fewer kids, which there might be fewer kids, but we're not talking about a decline in child population of 5,000 in 3 years. We're talking that the people are putting their kids in charter schools or private schools. And there's slightly difference between the two of them, but I won't get into that here. You also look at areas, for example, let's say Philadelphia. You poll people in Philadelphia, they overwhelmingly support school choice. They don't want their kids to go in these public schools being exposed to critical race theory, being exposed to gender theory, as opposed to getting an education. And this is an underlying factor that's affecting this. And I think people are underestimating how much this is actually affecting it. This is pretty much the issue that drove Glenn Youngkin to win in Virginia. Glenn Youngkin almost exclusively won because parents, were scared and angry with what their kids were being taught. When you see your kid in their library has a book that has literal pornographic content in it, and the school board is fine with that, you're going to be very angry. And you're not going to vote for those people. And who's opposing pornographic content in books in schools? Well, it's Republicans, and the Democrats are defending it, saying it's book burnings or banning books to oppose that. What? Or you look at something as, frankly, I don't understand how this isn't more controversial. Something like gender theory, going to kids and telling them that they can be any gender they want. Like, I'm sorry, what? I don't know what the proactive argument for that is, because it doesn't make sense to me, and I've not seen one that made sense to me, so I'm not going to pretend that is the argument. Again, comment below if you do have the argument. But the reason why that doesn't work for the Democrats and why this drives more support to the Republicans is gender theory completely undermines the well-being of kids. Again, Seattle Public School, they had 50 non-binary or transgender kids in 2019. Now they have 500. That doesn't just happen. Gen Z has like 20% identify, or is it 20% or is it 25%? Somewhere in that range, identify as gay, queer, or non-binary, or trans, or whatever. Boomers, it's 13%. What? You can't just tell me that, it's just purely people aren't being stopped from identifying as such, or else why aren't the old people changing their identities? No, it's very clearly that these kids are being told things when they are young and impressionable, don't understand things, and they're being shepherded into social gender transitioning. The fact, and this is why it doesn't work. You might think that, yes, there are transgender people or whatever. The reason why this kills Democrats, regardless of whether their position is technically correct or not, is parents don't like when they see their kids being told they're a different gender when they're 12 or 14 or other children ages. They don't like when strangers are talking to their kids about sex on an intimate level. And what happens when parents are unhappy with what people are doing and then one political party is defending what those people are doing? Oh, the parents vote for the other political party. Parents are a very large block of people in the US, and they're not naive, they're not poorly informed. They know on a very high level what's being, especially since the pandemic, what's going on in schools. And as it's getting more and more traction socially, they're paying more attention to it. So the fact that the Democrats are implicitly defending positions that are actively inflaming parents is driving parents who probably would otherwise be possibly non-voters or historically been swing voters, are driving them to vote Republican, because the other alternative is they don't protect their kids. And if you put a situation, for example, a mother to protect their child or not protect their child, almost 100% of women will protect their child even to their own death. Same with fathers, obviously. So if you are in a situation where your political party, your political beliefs, your agenda and your platform is implicitly threatening kids, at least to the eyes of the parents, though I would say generally threatening kids, you are going to cause parents to go the other way. And you might not like what I'm saying here. This might anger you, but if you really want to win politically, you have to understand what's going on. The Republicans will probably keep winning elections as this is, because there has been, for a while, Republican strategists ignored this issue, but you're starting to see, especially with a lot of the younger Republicans, or the, for lack of a better term, the MAGA Republicans, are more willing to fight this battle. This is generally a winning battle for them, because the people who are actually swing voters are angered by this. And this is the core thing of how you win or lose elections. You have to find something that galvanizes people who will actually vote for you. The swing voters would consider voting Republican, and if you find something that makes the swing voters really annoyed and is directly affecting them, and you campaign on that, they're going to vote for you. This is how Glenn Youngkin won in Virginia. Virginia is a pretty blue state, typically, these days. This is probably one of the reasons why we're going to see overwhelming flip in the House and probably a flip in the Senate. No, the Senate's not really a full flip, but you know what I mean. There is a lot going on here, and it's not just economy. It's economy and culture. The Democrats have pretty much done... They have the worst, electorally speaking, they have a terrible card of hands here, because they've aligned themselves so closely with a niche radical part of their base that they can't get away from it. If I was hired as a strategist for the Democrats right now, I don't know how you would get out of this pickle they're in. They are so closely aligned with the progressive left, the radical progressive left at that. I don't know how they could fix this. If they stopped talking and stopped pushing the radical feminist position, the gender... What do you even call them? The LGBTQ lobby position. They stopped pushing that, they would probably lose by that alone, because those people would stop voting for them. So they lose on that level, but they also lose on... They lose the centrists if they don't change that, because they don't like the position, because they don't like what it does to their kids. They're pretty screwed, and economically speaking, the Democrats could do spending cuts and stop talking about raising tax, or could increase oil production, cut spending, stuff like that. But then you're going to lose the socialists, which are a significant portion of their base. They might not vote. They might vote for third parties. Oh, but if they don't do that, then they also lose the centrists who just care about a good economy. Because things aren't good right now. The economy isn't good. So you have a bad economy, and you have effectively a losing culture war issues for the Democrats, and they're so closely identified with that, and their base is so clearly in the minority opinion in the U.S. right now. I don't know how they can recover. Maybe there's possibilities. Maybe the Republicans will screw up. But if your solution is their other guys to screw up, I don't really see the solution. The only thing I could see proactively from a campaign standpoint is you just have to take the bitter pill and either take a loss right now or just accept that you're going to be the losing party for years. I don't know how many years, but there'll probably be several cycles if this continues this way. The Democrats may or may not take the Congress or take Senate occasionally during like wave years, possibly midterms, under Republican presidents, but they're in a very bad position. Like electorally, I'm not actually sure what their best plan is. Because other than things going their way, luckily, like, for example, the economy doing well outside of what they're doing, like it just happens to be doing good. Like like all their policies are proactively making the economy worse, and culturally they're alienating people. Because again, we go back to this: women, one of the largest swings. I wonder why. Older people, a large swings. That's not even older people. Pretty much everyone, large swings. I wonder why. Poor people and middle class people, large swings Republican. I wonder why. University educated people, that's a very big swing. Why is the university educated swinging so massively? Oh, right, it's because the Gen Zers going to university don't like being talked about CRT and gender theory. They think it's dumb. I can tell you personally, I know a lot of people in Canada, my age, university grads, who think all of this is nonsense. They might be too scared to say it publicly, but they don't like it. Minority groups? Yep, they don't like it. Independents? Oh, they hate it. The only people who like what's going on right now is rich people. And if you actually break it down, I believe it is literally just the 100 to 200,000 a year people. So the very rich don't like it, generally. It's like the upper middle class, they like what's going on right now. And you know what, I never broken down by upper middle class, but the upper middle class urban white person, university educated white person, is the meme demographic for the Democrats. So young, university educated, upper middle class, urban white person is the meme demographic for the Democrats. It might not be the strongest part of their coalition, but it is the meme of the coalition. If you look around online, that's the group people rag about. Like, you'll see Tucker Carlson say the person he doesn't like is the upper middle class, overeducated white woman. That's his caricature of the person he doesn't like. And, there is basis to that statement, because that is probably the demographic that votes Democrat in the largest number. Not necessarily the highest proportion, but the most raw votes is from probably that subgroup. If you compare all similar subgroups. Now, you don't really use demographics this way because it's not perfect, but you get the idea here. Like, the Democrats are really getting into a position where I struggle to see how they're getting themselves out of this. Like, it's a bad position. Like, it's really bad electorally. They have pretty much alienated a large portion of Americans. And maybe that will change in 2 years. Doubtful. Maybe. Doubtful. Especially because I don't see OPEC really increasing oil production meaningfully. I don't see the demand for oil going down meaningfully. So the economy is probably not going to be good. The inflation's not going to go away quickly. And people will still remember it. And if it goes away, it's going to be because of a big recession. So the next couple of years, I think they're screwed. I don't know how they would fix it. It's past. I don't know what I would recommend to solve that problem. Because typically I try to war game scenarios here when I do these videos. Like, what would I do if I was this party? How would I fix this problem? I don't know. I don't know if they can fix it quickly. Like, they might just be right off in the near future. But I could be wrong. Stay tuned if you want to find out. I will always admit when I am wrong. So far, outside of when I miss polls because they came out after my last video, I've not really been that wrong. So, take that. Though I will admit I was technically wrong with Quebec, but I will still hold, it's mostly because my video came out before a lot of polls came out, so I'm getting the weeds there. Anyways, if you liked the video, by all means, like, share, subscribe, comment below what you think. I think I'm full of shit. I think I'm talking the real stuff. If I'm dumb, I don't know. Say all those things. If you like this kind of stuff, press subscribe, press the like button so I can get all that YouTube love and or Rumble love for those watching on Rumble. And share to your friends so they can see this stuff. It's better than YouTube notifications. And with that, I bid you all adieu, and I will see you Tuesday?